Hello, hello. Thank you so much, Afteria, for these wonderful words. I'm so happy to be here at Frontend Nation as the second slot at the second day. I love this. How can I say that? It just feels good. Okay, so I want to talk about a topic which is close to my heart, and I'm so happy to see to just talking about it at least briefly when it comes to accessibility and having an accessible web front end to be one of the most important responsibilities. In cases if you're blind or deaf or deaf and blind, you need to be able to navigate the web and especially navigate authentication, navigate the login. And as the cake might be a lie, maybe one or two of you already know the reference, but oftentimes our login accessibility or accessibility as a whole is not as far or as high as we'd like to have. But just to get into the right mood to grasp the problem, I want you to think about the cake and think about a situation, story connected to that cake. Imagine you're waking up the morning, but waking up in a pretty sterile, I hope that's the right English word, but still really clean, really tidy, but really cool room without any memories how you got there. The room looks like this. It's really, really cool, right? There's a radio playing music, pretty upbeat music, which is odd. And after a few seconds, a voice welcomes you, which sounds a little bit like a computer voice. You feel confused and don't know what to do when the door of the room will be opened. Listen to the voice giving you instructions, but don't understand it that well. Basically, big confusion. So I know I cannot see you through this camera, but I just imagine that some of you guys will raise their hands if you find this room familiar, or this radio, or a certain female voice telling you things, telling you security information, which might be important, right? Because it's introduced for your own safety and the safety of others, so it might be important, right? But at the critical moment where the information comes, it blacks out, it just goes or something inaudible, and then proceeds to use Spanish, which I don't understand, or if you're Spanish, imagine another language. And even if you can speak Spanish, this sentence doesn't make sense, right? I guess it's loosely translated as please refrain from many fail because of failure, thanks. So, right? All this doesn't help with the confusion. This is a setting some people of you might know because it references a certain game. And I would like to use this metaphor, this reference to the game. I'll touch upon that in a little bit because I guess this feeling of confusion, this feeling of lack of direction, orientation is a pretty common one. If you use an inaccessible app while you have disabilities, where you have impediments right now in place, and you cannot use it because you cannot read, you cannot hear, you cannot use your hands, you cannot basically use the app, right? So this is why I choose this depiction of the clear room and this confusion. As said, maybe some of you recognize the setting already. It's not just the running room I was drawing and talking about. I'm referring to Portal, which is one of my favorite games, at least Portal, the first and the second installment. It's by Valve, and as far as I know, it was published in 2007. So it's a little older right now, but it's still great because I love puzzle platformer. I love things. I love games where I need to solve puzzles. I need to go by logic. And this game is basically a series of such puzzles that must be solved by teleporting. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm jumping in, but we cannot see your screen. Can you please share it
Sorry.
again? I think we
Damn
could
it,
see it
sorry.
for a little bit, but now we can't.
This is interesting. I don't know when it stopped, when it comes to my screen, because I had it shared beforehand. I'm so sorry, guys. So let me quickly get back to my, I wonder when it got lost, actually, because I had it screen shared before. So let's get in the slides. I will start with the room so you can actually see a depiction. So sorry for that. I was already in my presentation, so I don't know when it got lost. Sorry.
That's
Again,
okay.
but
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. It's perfect actually for inaccessibility because you couldn't see my slides. You basically couldn't see what I was talking about. So this is where the player in Portal will wake up in. There's music being played by the radio, and I guess the player character called Shell, so that's basically this girl, felt as confused as you did when it comes to this thing, because I pretty remember I shared my screen, but whatever. Let's make the best of it. So there's a computer voice. This I guess it's a girl, but yeah, this voice should guide you through those rooms, which are called test chambers, because they want to test a thing. But it's not that much helpful if it blacks out or if it uses a language you are not being able to speak. This will not help. So yes, this might be how it feels if you have a disability. Wonderful example if you cannot see the slide. So yeah, let's try to be quick. So Portal is the game I was referring to, and as said, you need to solve a series of puzzles located into this rooms called test chambers. That need to be solved by teleporting the player's character or even simple objects to another platform, another part in the room. And the player character, called Chell, is challenged by doing that and taunted by the female voice, an AI construct named GLaDOS. And it has a certain kind of humor. If you play this game at one and you like sarcasm, you might like GLaDOS. So yeah, GLaDOS promised us to receive cake and have cake together when all the puzzles are completed and we reach the goal. I went for Portal as an allegory on accessibility because I think it's a wonderful storytelling device. The facility of aperture science, so basically the whole facility containing all the test rooms, is our application. And the test chambers can be the tasks and requirements of accessibilities or the puzzles we need to solve. And all those test chambers have hurdle in it and traps or piles of water, things we need to overcome, all hurdles, which could be a parallel to the challenges and pitfall traps in accessibility. And at the end, having a truly accessible app is the cake, like in Portal, is the reward, together with the knowledge how we overcome all those challenges or all those test chambers in Portal and reached our goal to escape the facility. So yes, for me, accessibility is basically the goal and it's basically the cake. So let's go straight ahead. Let's start with the first room. I guess that was the recreational facility, or how was it called? No matter, like the room where Shell or us as the playable character will start. GLaDOS will unlock the door so we're able to leave the room and to zoom in on the situation at hand. How is the test chamber, the next one, or the layout of building? How is the layout of our application? So let's take a look on the IRL situation. So when it comes to accessibility, I'd like to define it as a spectrum, more than just like the permanent ones you basically get inside of your head pretty quickly, like being blind, being deaf, not being able to speak. But there are more cases, right? Like people with disabilities, with the permanent ones, currently represent like around 15% of the world's population, which is a reason on considering accessibility already, because this is a big percentage, right? If I have one disability of a kind, but it could be even more because there's temporal disability. For example, I wear glasses, so sometimes I need to go for a checkup and I get eye drops. And especially in summer, it will make me very sensitive to light, as the screen will emit light, like the computer or my phone screen. I cannot read the screens, thus I'm being temporarily blind. Or situational if I'm riding a car, or if I have a broken arm, which might be another temporary disability. So accessibility is important for every one of us, and it should matter to every one of us, because even if it's just for the situation, being in a loud room, for example, or having an injury or a sickness, disability can hit us as well, even if it's temporary. So yes, we need to make sure that we have websites, application, and all of our project usable and accessible for everyone. Like all those people we talked about, all of us. And that's what accessibility means for me too. And many projects, many developers, such as myself, especially in content, claim to be front-end, claim to be accessible or to stick to accessibility guidelines, but aren't quite there yet. So yeah, the cake might be a lie. And I love this reference here because it's the most famous quote of the game where a cake was always promised by GLaDOS, by our guiding voice. But we won't get quite the cake we expected. Let's put it like that. So consider this for accessibility. Oftentimes we are not that far yet as we might think. And there's pressure to implement accessibility and to be accessible inside of an application because there are laws. I guess the Americans with Disability Act is there for a little longer because in the US, I found actual lawsuits against bigger companies like Domino's Pizza, Electronic Arts, so EA basically, to name a few well-known ones. But even here in Europe, where I'm located, the European Accessibility Act, the EAA, will get into place this month, as far as I know. So yeah, we need to be quick if we didn't start to get our applications accessible. And I know there are some guidelines and some exceptions, but still, many of us will need to get our applications on a high accessible level pretty quick. So let's try to tackle this challenge. Like in Portugal, you will solve the puzzle by creating actual portals like links, I'd say, to connect and find a way onto the next platform, into the next room. And in accessibility, we should do exactly that. We should try our best to build accessible apps to link and include all kinds of users, even if they have some kind of disability. Okay, let's get into pitfalls, examples, and into the code now. I prepared a small example application. I kept it as simple as possible on purpose so we can see all those pitfalls we might have done beforehand. This application is built in React and Vite, so it's pretty easy to understand, and if not, just let me know. And you can find all those examples of my talks here. Important is to know that I have two branches in there. The main one is the fixed one, so you will find the solutions on the main branch. And I have a broken branch for all the like pitfalls or bad examples in it too, so you can see the before and after stage. All right, let's get into the first test chamber, which is all about semantics. Let's take a look at this login form of my sample application. And I would like to zoom in a little bit on the input fields. Can you see what's not ideal in this regard? Yeah, I'm talking about the placeholders because they might look good if you put username, password, the title, the labels of the field into the placeholder, but it's not a good practice because there are examples or additional information, but not for labeling an input field. Some things like screen readers might struggle in this regard, so please don't do that. Instead, write the placeholder for labeling and go to a label. Use a label for the input fields instead of a placeholder. Like there's an actual element for labeling for a reason, right? Only use placeholders to provide additional information or examples what to type. It could look like this. And if we do that inside of our login form, it looks like this. So you have username, password printed as a label, and like us enabled people and the screen reader will be happy. Speaking about semantics, obviously, I will need to talk about semantic HTML because this is pretty cool. And we should take a look at that because implementing those tags is not that much of a heavy lift, right? Semantic HTML uses HTML tags to define the meaning and structure of web content and the elements in it. And in this regard, it makes it more understandable for both humans, screen readers, and search engines, which might come in handy as well, right? It's basically about using the right HTML element for the right purpose. For example, if you have a header, use the header element instead of a div. Or for the section, if it's a part of your page, use the section one. Or the figure for a image or a diagram, instead of relying on generic text for styling or layout, like a div, because what's a div, right? It's context which a screen reader will not have. Next one, the next chamber, will be all on colors, and especially one point, which is pretty quickly solved, I guess. It's on contrast. If you take a look at this login form, you will see, or like depending on your screen, you might not see it completely clearly, but it has two little contrasts for the input field border. So always mind the contrast, choosing a darker color for the input fields border, for example, and not only when it comes to elements like inputs or buttons, but also when it comes to text, keep it readable, right? So if we go for a darker color, it might look like this. So it's easier for us, especially if you have a glass like me, to navigate the application, to use it without needing to go so close to the screen. Next test chamber, it's on keyboard navigation and focus. So if we use this, we want to type in something into the username input field. The focus indication is pretty hard to see. It deactivates native outline and only changes the border color on focus, so it's pretty difficult for us already to see what input field we're typing in, and for screen reader, it's even worse. And same for the login button. It has no focus indication at all. So if you hover over it or click it, we won't see it. It's not reflected in the UI. So we really need to avoid using outline none like we did here. We could go for the outline property instead. Use some additional offset, for example, to increase the visibility. So there's basically a little more border around. We will see it in a bit. So here you can see the outline offset to make it a little clearer, and the outline property having, a pixel information solid and the color. And it looks like this. So here you can see it's easier to see that we're actually typing into the input field for the username. And same with the login button, right? So you can see that you're interacting with it. So we crossed the third test chamber. Let's go for the fourth, which is on error handling, a pretty important UI topic, not only for accessibility, but also when it comes to security. But let me go there real quick. Here I see three issues. The first is the error message generally. You can see in this like red thing. Login error does not tell the user what exactly the problem is, right? So he doesn't probably know what to do. Same with the error messages underneath the fields. They are too generic. Field should not be blank. Could be any field and does not offer any solution. You will see this problem later on in the screen reader. And the visual error indication for the field is only a red border. And as I have a colorblind friend, I know that this is a big example. If there's a red border in one of the fields, you wouldn't know which one is the one to correct. So yes, we need to figure out something better. Let's take a look here. So first, in the alert message, I want to tell the user what the reason is for the error and how to solve it. In this example, for example, the required field were not filled. So I'd go for a general error message like unable to log in, please fill in all required fields. So the user needs to know what to do. Second one, it's for the field error messages. I want to provide instruction on what to fill in the field specific to the field. So like going, please enter your username instead of just fill in anything. And last but not least, instead of just changing the input field border color to red, show a warning icon, which anyone would recognize. Not anyone, but we got that, but at least for a colorblind person, this is way much clearer. All right, I touched on one companion quite a lot already in this talk, but let's get into details a little bit more when it comes to screen readers, because it's a wonderful companion. Like the companion cube in Prodel, which is basically a small cube which accompanies us and helps us solving puzzles. And screen reader will help us solving the accessibility puzzle because it's a wonderful device to test. And obviously also the visually impaired person to read the page. So a screen reader is basically a reader that describes aloud what happens on your computer screen. It speaks the text that's in documents in Windows. And we will use the screen reader of macOS in a bit, so it's called VoiceOver, but I'm pretty sure that there's a Windows alternative as well, but the shortcuts might differ when it comes to activating it. In Mac, it's Command F5. And please keep fingers crossed right now that audio is working, but I would like to showcase you the screen reader. We will start first with the broken branch. So yeah, here are some problems, but let's tap through the document first. Yeah. This is the username. Let's let it talk. We could type if we want to, but I want to just click login right now. Let's do that. And now we don't have any indication that something went wrong, right? That's the problem. Very informative. Hmm. Hmm. Let's leave first. I didn't want to talk over the screen reader voice that much, but I hope you already noticed that when an error happens in this login form, and you cannot just rely on your eyes, it doesn't give up that much information that in an error to begin with, and even what to do to fix it. So let's sum it up. The user is not informed when there's an error in the login form. They are not informed that fields are required, even if it seems obvious to us visual users, they will not know. When selecting the input fields, the user is not informed that they are invalid, so they cannot see the mistake they probably did. And the error message underneath the input fields has no relationship to the actual input fields. It's just that the text, so we wouldn't know if we need to correct password or username. And last but not least, the image icon is pretty difficult as well because it doesn't give us any information whatsoever. So yeah, if you use a screen reader, reading this login form is pretty confusing and will not help you at all. There's another pitfall you should take into account if we want to fix it, because the native browser form error handling is sometimes flaky in screen readers. So yeah, we shouldn't completely rely on the native browser things. Even though they are helpful, oftentimes we might need to do a little more than that. So with a custom form error handling, you can often achieve better accessibility. And I linked the small QR code here for an interesting read if you want to go deeper on that one. It's a wonderful article by Special Magazine. Okay, let's quickly find out how we can prepare the login form so the screen reader can work with it properly. The first thing I would like to change is adding a role attribute, role alert, to the alert message component. So when React renders it, the screen reader will read its content. So basically, we will have feedback if something goes wrong, right? You could go even more deeper, but I guess I don't have the time for it anymore. It's ARIA live regions. Just let me know. I will share some more resources on that one if you want to. Next point to make better is basically adding an ARIA required attribute and setting it to true to the input fields. So in this regard, the screen reader will be able to read the field as required. Next small tweak would be the ARIA invalid attribute, which I will set to true if the form is invalid. And then the screen reader will read the field as invalid if that's the case. So if there's an error message, basically. Next one, you could go for the ARIA described by attribute that points to the error message via ID. So this way you can link the input field where an error might actually happen to the error message. And then the screen reader will read this input field when being focused. So then you will know by screen reader if we are in the right input field to correct the issue or not. Next one, the ARIA hidden attribute, which I'd like to assign to the icon because the icon of this error message didn't help us, right? So I don't want it to be read out. I want it to be omitted by the screen reader, so we can hide it basically. Okay, those are all the small tweaks I'd like to use when it comes to this login form. Let's see how the screen reader will react, and we'll start by the login click. There's the error feedback. Woohoo! Password, we know that password's missing. We know the form, the import field, same for the username. Yeah, and no icon will be read out anymore, so we are not surprised by an image word. So yes, it's way more accessible for a screen reader and thus for visually impaired people right now. As I want to zoom in on authentication specific, the next test chamber will focus a little bit more on that one, because I do think that a login form or basically any kind of authentication is crucial to be accessible, because this is a workflow every user needs to use, right? At least when using an app where there's a gate in between the public and informational features. So the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines do have a section on accessible authentication, so it's really crucial to have a look at it. I linked it here. I used those guidelines already in the test chambers before, but I want to mention some more details on authentication basically still. So let's take a look. First one is basically on alternative ways for passwords or even passwordless. So this is a success criterion in this guidelines, in the VCAG guidelines. And they emphasize the wonderful meaning of magic links and email authentication. So a one-time link sent to the user's emails that logs them in directly is perfect to decrease hurdles and decrease friction and have it more accessible, because it takes less steps. And basically the mail app is a device native thing, which makes it really easier. Same with biometric authentication, would be Face ID or fingerprint. We should always try to think about leveraging device capabilities, because oftentimes accessibility features are built in already and will help us a lot. Passkeys, so WebAuthn, might be a wonderful idea for passwordless authentication as well, because it's the gold standard for passwordless and it's pretty phishing resistant, which is cool. And it's designed with strong accessibility in mind, as again, it leverages device native authentication mechanisms. And even as a visual person, to put it like that, I'm pretty annoyed by one thing which some people do. Please never ever disable paste functionality in password fields. It's not only annoying for most people, it's crucial for users of password managers or for those with cognitive motor disabilities who rely on copy paste. So never ever put it out. Another thing which you should never really do, or at least try to avoid, is object recognition, which is basically where a user must choose which image they provided, like select your favorite picture of a cat, or even worse, personal content identification. It's basically when a user must identify specific content they have previously done or uploaded. For example, select the picture you uploaded that contains a dog, because screen readers might be troubled by recognizing those, and it's a cognitive load, like if you need to remember what picture you used. And in this context, I'd like to touch upon captchas as well. Be really careful when it comes to a captcha, because screen readers might struggle here if it's too complicated. So if you need to go for object recognition captchas, try to keep it as simple as possible. For example, go for select all images with a car, and nothing too complex which a screen reader should not be able to do with. Something which is a challenge, but I would still advise you to implement if you work with authentication is MFA, multi-factor authentication. So this could be a little complicated if you are using MFA too limited. So try to not not limit user to a single method like SMS only. Provide choices so they can use the choice which is most fit for their needs. You should also consider cognitive load for OTPs, one-time passwords, right? Passcodes. Be careful when it comes to time limits. So if you have a time-based OTP, try to be generous when it comes to the times because users with cognitive or motor disabilities should have a chance logging in, right? And auto copy paste might be a great idea to make it a little easier for those people wherever possible, like on mobile or for SMS OTPs. Sometimes I know that Apple is doing it already. So if you can auto copy or copy code button, this will help a lot. Some other UI connected tips would be a clear process indication. So if MFA is multi-step in your application, have the indicator of step 1 or step 2 of 3 so the user know where they're at. Be really careful when it comes to QR codes. For example, if you want a user to set up an authentication app, always provide the text-based secret key as an alternative for users who cannot read or scan your QR code. And last but not least, I know that it's unavoidable for NFA to switch apps or switch devices. Try to avoid this context switching as much as possible so it reduces cognitive load. So a small shout out, Auth0 does have those features implemented, and there will be a component library, like we call it UI component in React, helping to build up accessible authentication. So if you want to stay up to date, scan this QR code now or later, and basically take a look and let me know what you think. My talk is getting closer to its conclusion right now, so I just want to leave you with some small, general, low-hanging fruit tips, basically, which didn't fit the test chambers before, but I still think they're important. It's those 6. So first, use alt text to describe images, so a screen reader can see the content of an image. Next to using semantic HTML, get back to the basic and stick as close to native HTML as possible because this is the easiest for a screen reader to interpret. Then ensure all text is readable, not only when it comes to contrast, but also when it comes to placement, so everyone can read everything. Use hierarchical headings to keep everything structurized and easy to digest for a screen reader, and make optional content skippable so users can focus on the most important task at hand. And last but definitely not least, and really important, the topic of flashes. If you have a video or animation, please reduce flashes as much as possible because you don't want to have users with epilepsy to struggle, right? So try to avoid those. So in this regard, let's make sure the cake is not a lie, right? So it's existing, it's delicious, it's theirs, and we wrote. Like in Portal, hopefully it is. It's not completely clear, but it should be clear in our application. So accessibility is truly meant and implemented by us developers, and not just a good-looking label or not just on a level to just barely met the regulations. Try to be truly accessible so the web becomes, and stays a place for everyone, especially important things or workloads such as authentication. My name is Ramona. I'm a developer advocate at Auth0, and I'm so happy to have you here in my talk. And all that's left for me to say is thank you so much. Sorry for all those little struggles I had in the beginning of the talk. So if you stick with me, I'm even more grateful to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you for helping us, helping you, helping us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Your presentation was wonderful. If
Thank
I'm not
you.
mistaken, you are also creating your own designs, your own slides. So that was really amazing.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
We have a few questions for you. Are you ready for them?
I guess, yeah.
Perfect. So someone is asking any tips on how to get skip links to work in Vue.js without throwing an error?
Oh, that's a good question right now. I guess having a general, like I don't know your project right now, so in case you want to send it to me, that would be great to get a little more context, because it could be a couple of things. Like generally, I'd like to advise you to basically do all things you can when it comes to debugging, may it be dev tools, may it be devices, and trying to get all errors printed out, and then you get basically a little more detective. But to get into more, and more examples, I'd be happy to, if you could basically send me a small code snippet in Twitter or LinkedIn or something, so we could dig a little deeper.
Thank you for providing this kind of help. Another person is asking, does a colorblind person see an icon in the same color of a text they cannot see or find it difficult to see?
So I'm not colorblind myself, so I fully rely on the things my friend told me. And he said that for him, it's difficult to see. It's like grayish-y, and depending on the shade of gray, it might be, again, the contrast issue. So that's a little difficult. An icon is a little better because it's still an icon, so it conveys information by its shape. But when it comes to colors, that's really interesting. Actually, I did the Portal co-op mode together with him, and the second player has an orange and a blue, orange and a red portal you can place. And he always told me, like, do the bright red one something else, and I went for orange because for me it was orange, for him it was bright red. So yeah, it's interesting. So yes, it's a difficulty to see. It's some grayish color, but obviously, as I don't know because I can see, I'm not colorblind. It's difficult for me to do like a generalization right now. But it's a wonderful, interesting topic, and you should talk to colorblind people because it's really interesting to basically compare the view, basically, or the point of view.
Yeah, it makes sense. And we have one more question for you. There are so many ARIA attributes. How do you know which to use in different situations?
Oh, this is a good one. This is a good one. So the most important ones, like describe by and stuff, I already have inside of my mind, or the role basically. I had a cheat sheet basically. So it's somewhere on my laptop. So sometimes I get it back on my screen and see if I don't remember a certain one. But I guess if you stick to those we took a look at in this talk, you're already good to go for the basics. So especially if there are so many, you can argue on one, like what the limit is on to implement, or to say, okay, that's not that much, getting not that much priority, such as like connecting input fields to our messages and stuff.
Yeah, again, it makes sense. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. And again, sorry for the screen issue. I didn't notice because I was in my presentation completely.
No worries, no worries. I think the audience got it. Perfect. See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.